Welcome, everybody, to the C Suite Sherpa Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Marshall, where we focus a spotlight on great resources for the C-suite. And speaking of great resources, we've got Ray Arata with us today. So, Ray, why don't you tell us a bit about what you do and maybe a bit about your background and who you work with?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. In short, I support leaders to get into their heart so that at the end of the day, they're leading from their head and their heart. What that basically means is in their leadership endeavors, in their communication, in their behavior, their level of awareness is heightened because they're aware of the impact they can have on the people in their company. People look up to these leaders. In large part, I work with a lot of men, but these are leaders, CEOs, C-suite folks, high-end CPAs, solopreneurs that run businesses and realize that they're often in their own way. When they start realizing all of this is happening on their watch, they can take responsibility for how they affect and lead other people's. They come to me to be that coach, to be that consigliere, to be that sounding board, to ask them the hard questions that they need to ask and answer themselves.
Yeah, that's great. I wish everyone could have been involved in our conversation before we started the podcast. And I actually want to maybe deviate from the script here and talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. I know it's a big topic for you, and it's about leadership. I noticed that you've got an email address that talks about the Better Man Conference. Maybe start there and talk about the work you do with leaders and how you transition into some of the issues that affect personal life as well.
Sure. If we can all recall what we've seen in the press, the social and political narrative over the last year, we saw that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, was weaponized. We saw negative attention put on white males. We also saw the weaponization of the word woke. One of the things I've come to realize is despite all of that, I'm getting inbound calls from HR and leadership that the behavior of men inside companies still has not changed. Women are ready to pounce. They're getting the short end of the stick. And the same thing with other folks who herald from marginalized groups. When I came up with the idea of the Better Man Conference, I was leading men's weekends, supporting the healing of men to be better fathers, husbands, leaders, sons, etc. When I thought of this notion to advance healthy masculinity into the leadership conversation, for whatever reason, it took fire and I started the Better Man Conference. So what ended up happening is companies, the Intels, the Genentechs, the Price Waterhouse Coopers, the NGOs, a whole variety of companies saw the Better Man Conference as a place to send their men and others to be better leaders. And so I used this platform to curate workshops and experiences and speakers. By the time the men and women left, the women said, wow, I didn't know this about men. And men realized that there was a better way and that they could start working on leading more inclusively. I was encouraged by a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader to go to a women's leadership event, and I'd probably be the only guy there. I went there, and that's when it hit me. All those times my mom said to me that her older brother, Italian American family, got all the rights and privileges, and she didn't because she was a girl. And by the way, my mom passed away a year ago. She's in my mind and in my heart. My wife was the oldest of 8, whose youngest, in an Italian family in San Francisco, whose youngest brother was running the company. And finally, my daughter was working at a tech company. I said, you know what, someone's got to do something so that the world that she comes into and the world she's working in is going to be safer and more equal. So that sent me on a 9-year journey, 17 Better Man conferences later, which had me write my most recent book, Showing Up: How Men Can Become Effective Allies in the Workplace. So right now, I'm getting inbound calls to coach those executives to go in and facilitate conversations between leaders so that they can create a more inclusive culture where everybody can come and thrive. And we're not blaming the men. That's the key thing. We're not blaming the men.
Yeah, to create a safe environment, which is what leadership is about, right? Create a safe place where people can speak their truth. Whether you agree or not, it's a separate issue. Leaders fail at that all the time. They don't make it safe, and they don't want input or criticism, but that's how you sharpen each other, right? You got to be open to hear from other people, men, women, young, old, it doesn't matter. If you don't create that safe environment for people to give you that feedback, you're really not going to improve. And I've seen so many leaders that say, hey, I want to hear the truth. But they don't really want to hear the truth. They want everyone to talk about how good they are, and they want everyone else to improve. I love what you're doing. If you're a leader, especially a male leader, and you're dealing with these kinds of issues, there are places to go where
Yeah.
you can work on yourself. And I tell people, listen, here's the good news. The good news is there's places to go. The bad news is you have to work on it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. The question that I've yet to not hear a good answer is, how do you want to be experienced by those around you? And that kind of stops a lot of leaders dead in their track. To be interested in how they're actually experiencing you is key. If they answer that question in the affirmative, then we've got an opportunity to do some work.
Yeah, this is great. For those that have listened to my podcast, I run a men's nonprofit very similar to what you're doing. It's a event. It's very specific to going offsite and disconnecting with a group of other men for 3 days, really working on yourself and getting in touch with where those wounds come from. Where do we learn these habits? Because we weren't born with these habits. The things that we do as men are all learned behaviors. And
Correct.
so helping men unpack that and get in touch with that is part of their journey. But their journey, like I said, has to continue for the rest of their lives. And yet most of us are in our comfort zone and we don't want to get out of our comfort zone. Even if it means we get way better as leaders and we deal with all these problems, it's just comfortable. I've worked hard. I'm in that place. I don't want to have to change. And what I do is help men get uncomfortable with being comfortable.
There you go. Yeah, I get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's exactly. And then become comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's really flipping the script. I love that. So tell me about, you're working with a leadership team. How does it come up? Do they come to you personally and say, hey, Ray, I need help? Or do you approach them? If a leader's watching this, you're helping leadership teams become better teams, become cohesive, to build safe environments within work. But that has to extend beyond work when they're at home with their families and friends. How do you transition that into a personal coaching relationship?
So all of my coaching relationships are personal. And what I say right off the bat, because I have a unique approach in terms, because of my background of 20,000 hours and leading 60 plus men's weekends and running men's groups, things of that nature. So I've developed and become a business coach. I've developed a skill set that is a non-negotiable skill set that I bring to these clients. I say to them right out of the bat, who you are at home and who you are at work are one and the same. Whatever your narrative is that says to you otherwise, that's horsepucky. And the sooner you get interested in understanding why you've been doing what you've been doing, which gives you current results, and if you can confront that that's not working for you and you want to be better, then self-examination of, Carl Jung refers to it as shadow beliefs, those beliefs about ourselves that we hide, repress, and deny, which we've all heard them, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. And if it's shame, I'm a piece of you know what, or I'm bad. It's those beliefs got put into place, and your protective mechanisms, which worked for you when you were a kid, don't work anymore. And so I go there right away. I use myself as an example. My little trick is I go first so that you can go.
All right.
Once they understand that, I'll say, if the guy's name is John, I start talking to him about little John, the little guy inside. When I did my men's weekend in 1999, I realized that the hurt little boy in me was driving the adult bus.
That's right.
And when I put it in those terms, they start to realize, oh, the way I talk to women, or the way I give feedback, or the way I step into unconscious patriarchy, and I start paying attention to the body language in the room, or I've been given feedback and I'm supposed to get coaching. It really doesn't matter how they come to me. But at the end of the day, because I have an existing brand, the Better Man conferences, there's not 100 of me out there.
No,
There isn't.
no. It's a very finite resource. I've gone through hundreds of hours of training in shadow work. I'm an armchair psychologist. I've never actually gotten a degree. I tell people I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't prescribe medicine, but I can tell you what it's like to be a broken man, because I've got a lot of experience with that.
Yeah. Well, you and I are very similar in that regard. I go there, and if it scares the crap out of them, that's fine.
Fine.
Create that space.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they're going to be a better father, a better husband, a better brother, a better partner, a better leader at the end of the day. Because I say to them, what you do at home, you do at work, and vice versa. So when we do our coaching sessions, everything's open for discussion.
Yeah, that's a great thing. What's interesting about this too is that men need to have role models. And, we've lost, as a society, we've lost the ritual of boys becoming men. If you think about other cultures, the Jewish tradition of bar mitzvah, the Africans would go out and hunt a lion or prove that they're a man. They would go out, the boys would go out with the men, come back men. And we're actually doing the opposite. And the point I wanted to make was that shaming men and saying that you're a toxic, masculine, white male hasn't changed male behavior.
Yeah,
Male
no,
behavior only changes from within. And what you're doing is you're going to that dark place. You're helping men touch their shadow and you're helping guide them out to a different world where they can be authentic and they could literally own their brokenness without shame. And that's what changes the behavior. That's what creates men that are empathetic. That changes men who are angry and weaponize anger to suddenly use anger to be righteous and do great things in the world. People talk about anger as a bad emotion. It is not. Emotions, there is no bad or good emotion. It's just an emotion.
well, the offsites that you do and the New Warrior Adventure trainings that I do for the Mankind Project, we refer to them as initiations into healthy manhood. The
Yeah.
only initiation not courses, but the only initiations out there right now are gang initiation and fraternities. Those aren't the kind of initiation
No.
that we're looking for. So with a lot of men in pain, a lot of men in isolation, I start looking at all the gun violence. All these men have not known how to move out of their head to this vast area of real estate below their chin called their body, where their emotions are. So when I work with men, I teach them 5 core feelings: mad, sad, glad, fear, and shame. I work on developing emotional literacy as soon as possible because it's not up here, it's in here. Most, if not all of them, myself included, we didn't have a role model that demonstrated healthy masculinity, emotional literacy, and vulnerability and authenticity. In the context of business, I came up with 6 heart-based leadership principles: emotional literacy, vulnerability, authenticity, inclusive, vulnerability, and love. I used to be afraid to say that on stage. Now I'm like, to hell with it. To my surprise, a lot of companies and individuals love hearing that.
Yeah.
So as a 6'3" 3.5" tall Italian American guy, I present very masculine. But once I open up my mouth, because I've opened up my heart, it makes it possible for other men to do the same. And with the whole white male thing, I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten from women of color in HR and DEI departments saying, hey, can you come in and talk to our white male leaders? Can you meet them where they are? Yes. Will you shame them and blame them? No.
No. No. No, that's Ray. I want to affirm you for what you're doing. It's amazing work. Like I said, we could spend the rest of the day talking about that, but we are out of time. Our normal podcast, I would do something called the lightning round. I just really wanted to have this conversation with you. Listen, I want to encourage people, especially male leaders. If you're struggling, if you're trying to figure out where you fit in, or if you want to be more authentic, reach out to somebody like Ray. Ray, how do people get in contact with you?
So the easiest way to get a hold of me is email ray@bettermanconference.com. Because of my experience with men, some men aren't ready for coaching. Some men aren't ready to do a men's weekend. Some men aren't ready to join a men's group. But a book in the confines of your own home,
Right.
makes that, it's a good starting point. So if any of your male listeners are in any kind of crisis, which I would refer to as a wake-up call, then Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up, transforming your wake-up call to emotional health and happiness is a great place to start. If you're a leader and you're not in crisis, but some of this man stuff that we're talking about appeals to you, also get Showing Up, How Men Can Become Effective Allies in the Workplace. It takes the bones of Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up and corporatizes them into leadership principles. In the first book, there's a bunch of journal entries and a lot of work to do. And the second one is really more tips and tricks.
Terrific. Well, we'll put all that information in the description of the video on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't get all that, just check out the description. You'll have Ray's contact information, how to get those books. Ray, it has been more than a treat to talk to you. I want to stay connected with you so you and I will talk some more, but thank you for sharing the message. I think a lot of men need to hear this. Great having you on the podcast.
Thanks so much.